we're back once again for another fantastic episode of 3 Random Anime. I was debating on not continuing this series because honestly, I don't feel like it'll get as many views as my regular reviews. And also because the camera looks like garbage. But you know what they say, never judge a book by its cover. And I feel like we should have a similar mindset for anime reviews. Never judge a book by its cover, and never judge the anime review by its shitty camera quality. In the new season of God is a Dick, the sequel that took 9 years to make, 9 years is kinda crazy. To really hammer this into perspective real quick, I was 10 in 2013. I wasn't watching anime at 10 years old. And if I was, I had just started. I was watching One Piece, not knowing what the fuck was going on. In 9 years, you go through the entirety of high school and 4 years of college. That's how long it took for this anime to come out. So when you think about it like that, I completely understand the sentiment that this season was disappointing or didn't live up to the hype. For 9 years, 9 years for a sequel is crazy. And to an extent, I share the exact same opinion as everyone else, despite not watching the series originally. And I'm not saying this anime is bad. This anime is definitely watchable with the right expectations. But when it comes to comedic writing, character development, and especially animation and art, this season is a massive downgrade when you compare it to season 1. But first, let's talk about the biggest positive in this anime, which is the fact that they kept the voice actors pretty much the same from the previous season. The performances that are done by the main cast of voice actors for the main characters were just as stellar as the first season, if not better. And even the new characters that got introduced in this new season all had very experienced and talented voices. The best example I can give for that is the main bad guy, Gabriel, who is voiced by Takahito Koyasu, who has one of the most recognizable voices in all of anime. He has a very deep, kind of menacing voice, so hearing him play such a goofy, strange character like Gabriel is very entertaining to me, and it was one of my favorite things of the season. Really, Gabriel was a great add-on to the series in my opinion. He is a cocky, playful bad guy, and he's really entertaining and a lot better than the other guy they had for last season. Hina Kino to voice Alice Ramis was another great add-on to the cast. She plays this cute kid almost perfectly, and it really is a massive highlight for the season. But I do feel like the cast all did a stellar job with their characters. Ashia's performance is still just as amazing as ever. He's one of my favorite characters in the series, if not my favorite character, because he's so serious and really taking this home ec thing seriously. And speaking of, let's talk about these characters and what happens to them in this series, because while this series does not even come close to the drama involving Chi falling in love with the devil, which leads to Amy trying to stop it while Amy is also fighting back feelings for the devil. This season does have a lot of interesting things that happen to the characters. I thought the development towards the end with Chi and Amy were really good. Amy's whole purpose for becoming a hero and fighting the devil being completely worthless, and her realization of that is a great setup for the sequel. Considering she doesn't have that feeling for revenge anymore, I can imagine that's the reason they're gonna give for why Amelia falls in love with Mao instead of trying to fight him. I feel like that's where they're going with it. And you also have Chi's involvement with Amy's parents, which is kind of a spoiler for the series now that I think about it, but I can't talk about Chi's character without bringing up the fact that she's kind of close to Amy's parents now. The main issue is all of this came way too late into the series to really matter in season 2. There is slight build to Amy's parents and the Yisard shards and Alice Ramis and Chi and all that. And I can understand the purpose of the farming and beaching arcs in this show because McDonald's was closed and you need a way to replace the slice of life aspect in this series to further humanize the main characters. And to give these two arcs the benefit of the doubt, they're not complete filler. They do tie up a couple loose ends, such as the landlady's involvement in the Parallel World. It does kind of explain that further, and it also is a great way to introduce Amy's mom. But I would be lying if I said this section of the show was as entertaining as the ending and the beginning, because it's not. And I saw some people critiquing this anime as I was watching, saying that this season is too slice of life, which doesn't make any sense. The action scenes aren't the main part of the show. The show has always been slice of life oriented. But I do feel like I have a good reason as to why this section of the show in particular was way worse than every other part of the show. That has to do with the studio change and how they messed around with the comedic writing. The first season had a phenomenal way of writing. Its comedic timing was impeccable, and that leads to a more humorous experience. The comedic timing in this section was way off, it felt like. Sometimes I would completely miss jokes because the comedic timing was so off, making these more slice-of-life episodes a drag to get through. Not saying there aren't moments of brilliance in this anime. The Ashia and Rika storyline and their love angle is still probably my favorite subplot in the series at this point, and Amy's reaction to it all was just fantastic. And Gabrielle was a character who was consistently making me laugh. Compare it to the first season, and it's not even a comparison. It honestly feels like a completely different show at times because it's not making you laugh nearly as much as it did in the first season. Something to praise about this show's writing, at least in my opinion, is Alice Ramis. I think Alice Ramis was an amazing inclusion into this season. Not only is she a cute kid that adds a childcare aspect into this season, which is a genre I just personally enjoy, but she's also a great way to build the main ship of the show, which is Mao and Amy, and make them be closer together as the reluctant parents. It is very entertaining watching these two bicker with each other while also trying to parent a child. Chi's purpose into the series is still one of the better things about this show as well. Not only is she the glue that keeps the group together, but her main conflict is entertaining. Being that at some point her friend and future lover are going to either kill each other or they're just going to abandon her for the other word. Hell, they might do both. She's also the main vessel for Amy's mom to communicate to the group. She does have a little cool moment at the end where she uses her archery skills to help the group. So I was worried she was going to be useless again, but it turns out she actually has a bit of a purpose in this season, which is cool. Alright, enough appraisal. It's time to talk about the worst part of this season. Do I have to talk about it? I really don't want to talk about it. I have to? Okay. Okay, cool. The animation and art stink. I had a feeling there was going to be a significant downgrade when I found out the studio was changing to 3HZ and the director has only worked on an ONA and Isekai Cheat Magician. You know, I'm typically someone who can get used to a show's art style pretty quickly, but I never got used to the art in this show, like not at all. And you want to know the reason why I feel like I never got used to the art in this show? At the very bottom of my mouse pad is a very large picture of characters from A Devil's a Part-Time on it. So every time I would look down, even if it was for a split second, I would look down and see just how good this show used to look. And then I would look back up as I was watching the anime and see how significantly regressed it is. I generally feel like that is the reason why I never got used to the art in this show. The art in this anime is like a chicken with no seasoning. I can eat it, it's digestible, it's edible, but it could be so much better. Like, it's just flat and bland. And the worst part about it is, it gets worse. It somehow gets worse. Like I mentioned in my seasonal video, how the production wasn't terrible or anything, it was just super average. The farming arc has bad art, has bad production in general in it. Like, the animation is also really bad in the farming arc. Like, it's almost like they're deliberately trying to make shots that they don't have the budget or the talent to do. Honestly, I would rather you just stay in your lane and make a mediocre adaptation than try to do this extra stuff. With the animation, there's no eye-grabbing action scenes, and there's no cool-looking environments, and it's just bland. Like, that's the best way to describe the entire production in this anime. It's just bland. And that's not even getting to the character design. It's like some of the characters don't even look the same. Amy doesn't look like that. Mao doesn't look like that. Usually when an anime goes through a studio change or an art style change, The new people that work on the new season try their best to replicate what the old season looked like, because you run the risk of the viewer noticing the art style change, which takes them out of the show completely. I feel like the best part about this art is that at some points it's just really funny, but it feels like that's more me laughing at the show than with it. Look, I'm not mad that this season was released. I'm actually very thankful that this season 2 got released, because it's an anime I really like getting a continuation. And some of these critiques are just terrible, like Alice Ramis ruining the show. Like, I saw that complaint, and maybe this is my fault for looking at Mao reviews, which I should just stop doing, but sometimes they're just so funny. Like, I saw one where they were saying that Alice Ramis is a ripoff of Anya. They're not even in the same age group. All the genuine criticisms you can give to this show, and y'all pointing to Alice Ramis like she isn't the best thing in this season. Like, how is a device that helps humanize the main characters further a bad thing to the show? I really wish I could come on here and say that this season is actually good just to spite those people, but I gotta be honest. This anime and this animation is mediocre at best. While the plot is developed further in the season, and it actually sets up season 3 really well in my opinion, and there are interesting bits of character development, those elements of this season come way too late. The comedy felt pretty hit or miss, which is a bad thing when you consider that season 1 was pretty consistent in its comedy and was one of the funnier shows released. And the overall look of this show is just bad. Yeah, this season was a disappointment. I do think season 3 will be better though. Let's just pray to God that season 3 will be better. Or maybe not pray to God, pray to the devil. Pray to the devil that this season 3 will be better. Shadows House Season 2 is a continuation of everything good that Season 1 left behind it. We learn more about the mysteries surrounding the Shadows House and what it truly means to be a shadow, and where the future leads for these characters and how they become adults. All of these loose ends are tied pretty nicely in this new season. The slower pacing in this series helps the plot twists and the bigger moments feel a lot more important and a lot bigger, and it really pulls you into the show. This new season mostly focuses on a brand new character called Maou-Sama, who is causing all these issues in the Shadows House to try and expose its true nature. And most of this season is the characters trying to figure out who this mysterious person is and what their motivation is. For obvious reasons, I can't say who exactly Maou-Sama is in this video, but I will say the reveal is very surprising and very satisfying, and seeing each of the characters break down every single name it could be until they finally land on who it is very satisfying to watch. People had the nerve, the temerity, to call this adaptation bad because Maou-Sama was introduced a little bit later in the show than in the manga. You people are frothing at the mouth because you know if you call something a bad adaptation, it's going to lead to more engagements for whatever platform you're using. I get Cloverworks lost a lot of trust with people, especially after Promised Neverland and Wonder Egg Priority and all that, but just because they messed up a couple times does not then mean that everything they work on is going to be god-awful. Calm the hell down. Now, that doesn't mean there weren't a few moments in this anime that I felt could have been better. The plan that Kate and them came up with was sprung on very suddenly. It was like they came up with the plan, and then 1 minute later, the plan happened, and you were not a part of the process whatsoever. I feel like that was very unsatisfying, especially for what is the biggest fight at this point in the anime. But that is a very minor nitpick in the grand scheme of things. I was engaged in the mystery from the very beginning, and I liked that Kate's motivation for finding out who Maou-Sama is was to clear her innocence of them blaming her for the massive tragedy that was caused by Maou-Sama. It never made any sense from any logical standpoint that Kate was Maou-Sama, but they were blaming her out of bias. So it kinda helps you understand why Kate was so angry, because she was unjustly blamed for something she very obviously did not do. The ending to this season was brilliant, and it featured one of the most beautiful scenes, probably the most beautiful scenes in the entire anime up to this point. If you've seen the show, you know exactly what scene I'm talking about. And the best part is, the mystery surrounding Maou-Sama is not even close to the best mystery in this show. This entire show is one big mystery that is slowly being unraveled as you go along. And the more you learn about the Shadows House, and the more you figure out the history and what is really going to happen to all these characters, the more interesting the world becomes. The world building and exposition scenes in this anime are really good. Learning about the Star Bearer's past and the new character named Christopher was really interesting. And these exposition scenes really help you appreciate the characters of the Star Bearers more, especially Barbie and Barbara. Because up until this point, all these characters, especially Barbara and Barbie, now that you have a little bit more context, you can understand why they are the way they are. And it also helps you understand why My fucking mic fell, what the fuck? Literally nothing happened, the mic just randomly fell. Anyway, back to what I was saying, these scenes also help you understand why Christopher is treated as some urban legend that should never be mentioned. Because he had such a major impact on the Shadows House and these characters, that not only did that completely change their characters once what happened to him happened, it also set an unreal expectation that they can never achieve, because Christopher was that good at his job. So that was just another mystery that helped you understand these characters even more. There are plenty of little bits of storytelling that are subtly told either visually or just kind of offhandedly that add to the viewing experience a lot. The plot involving the soot powers was also really cool. I like how, for example, Kate's power and Mary Rose's power are about the same but are used entirely differently. The main cast also has a lot of development. In particular, I really loved Patrick's development in this series. Patrick has gone from one of my least favorite characters in season 1 to one of my favorites. It was really entertaining seeing Kate learn from Emilico on how to be more approachable and how to be friends with other people, because it's something she doesn't do. It's not something she's used to. They are completely different characters when you think about it. And this series tries to really hammer home the differences between the Shadows and the humans' personalities, because let's say when the Shadows grow up, they do a little bit of that. If you're catching what I'm putting down, they do It makes the almost unavoidable fate that the Shadows and humans will go through that much more painful when you realize that they are completely different people for the most part. And the anime does a really good job demonstrating the differences between the adults and the children, making them so much more powerful than the children that they can't even contest with them. That just makes the fate that these characters are heading in that much more realistic and unavoidable. The last thing this show does well in terms of story is they make every little detail feel important. I kind of mentioned this earlier when I talked about how they subtly and very offhandedly tell stories in the anime that just make things flow a lot nicer and make everything feel connected, but it really does need to be hammered home just how well this anime does at that. Even small details like the fact that Emilico brings food everywhere become a major part in this series later on. One arc that I really enjoyed in this season was the Bell Sisters arc. Seeing the Bell Sisters, who by the way are very unlikable people, but seeing them slowly lose it because they keep getting sick over and over again due to the soot sickness that they're being forced to have because it's punishment for the Maou-Sama tragedy. It's just very brutal to watch, really, and the way each character reacts to this situation, besides Kate and her friend group, the rest of the characters react as if it's normal, as if this is a regular thing that happens. And that really hammers home just how messed up this system has made these people that are otherwise good people. All of this was told very subtly too. This is not really told to the viewer. I did think the animation in the fight scene towards the end of the show was very well done. Certain camera angles and certain scenes can make the scene feel more gruesome. I have to give this anime credit for being very dark, but not being very edgy or gory, which again is very rare in anime. The art does its job. It perfectly hides the dark nature of the show. If you were someone who's never seen it, you'd think it wasn't as dark as I'm saying it is. Not only does having a bright design like Emilico be the main protagonist perfectly contrast the dark backgrounds and the vacancy of the shadows designs, but it also perfectly fits her. There's this one scene where Kate is very angry and Emilico is doing a very poor job at making a angry face for Kate, which is just really funny to me. Cloverworks also nails close-up shots in general. Like in most of their shows, they have really high-quality close-up shots, and this is no exception. The music is great. We actually have a singing OP this time instead of just an orchestral theme like we got last time, and it's sung by Riona, who sang the ending for the last season. Her whisper singing is very ominous, and then it builds to this very anthemic chorus, which perfectly fits the series when you think about it. Now, is Shall We Dance more of a banger than Nanai? I'm gonna say it is. The ending is sung by Claire S, who are also a very talented group of singers, and they're very good as well. I just have less to say about this ending. Yeah, this show is very good, y'all. The plot progresses in a nice, slow pace, which helps engage the viewer into the mysteries while also not being boring at all due to the depth and exposition of the word, and it helps the climaxes to the mysteries feel so much larger and bigger. It can be a lighthearted comedy, but also a very dark show, but it also doesn't rely on a lot of gory and edgy scenes to be dark. Where Promised Neverland failed at making a sequel that continued the mysteries in a compelling way, Shadow's House excelled at that same concept. And with the new cast of characters that are expected to come next season, and Emilico's and Kate's new promotion, Season 3 should be a really fun watch as well. So watch and support this show now, because it honestly really deserves it. It's a very underrated show in my opinion. Typically, when it comes to this third spot, I try to review an anime that isn't as popular compared to the other two shows I talked about to try and bring more attention to it. Well, I mean, sometimes I don't do that, but that was the main idea when I started this series. Jashin-Chan in particular is a series I'm surprised I never talked about before on this channel. And to be honest, I feel like it's because it's hard to describe. It's like trying to describe a dream or like a drug trip to someone who wasn't there. To give you all a basic rundown of the plot, a goth summons a demon, and now that demon has to try to kill that goth in order to go back to hell. Very simple. Except the demon keeps failing. Over, and over, and over, and over, and over. And oddly enough, it's the kind of premise that you assume won't be funny for 3 seasons. But really the best parts of this comedy is the complete absurdity of the characters in the word. It's definitely not something that everyone will enjoy. If you're a fan of more subtle, nuanced humor, then this show will probably annoy you more than anything. But if you're a fan of that high-octane, absurd, just ridiculous humor that anime typically has, then this show is at the cream of the crop, or at least pretty close to it. The story in Season 3 is pretty much the same as every other Jashin-Chan season. I will say a main highlight for me is in the first few episodes where most of the jokes are just like, how did we get crowdfunded for 3 seasons? I mean, thank you. But seriously, how did we get crowdfunded for 3 seasons? Speaking of the crowdfunding, I can't help but assume that part of that was done by specific regions in Japan, considering that there was like a 5-episode arc in this anime where it's all about Jashin-Chan ending up in different regions of Japan to run away from her debt that keeps on growing the more she travels. I appreciated that this arc features multiple setting changes, allowing for different backgrounds, and learning about the actual areas they were in were pretty interesting. Of course, the main highlight is Jashin-Chan's insane but really stupid ideas of trying to avoid her debt. But it is a nice breath of fresh air because this anime mostly takes place in the same locations, and that location is pretty small. Like, I really enjoyed the fact that Jashin-Chan's finishing move at the end of the series is from a gamepad instruction. It even makes a reference to Gintama, which is a meta-reference anime referencing another meta-reference anime. Are we in the Upside Down? The side characters were already some of the best parts of the show, and they added more this season. Like, they added Liel. Liel is a interesting character. She is essentially God, but she has to be stuck in a body of a young girl, and that kind of affects her pride. The vampires were pretty good. I kind of like the fact that they have another weak but cocky character in there to give Jashin-Chan some company in that regard. That's it, right? That's all the side characters they added in, I think. It's not like they added in like a pop culture icon or anything like that as a main character in the show. Oh, they did? Oh, yeah, you're right, they did. Oh, let's talk about Miku. Really, Miku is a great part of this show. Not only is her Vocaloid voice thing pretty funny, but the fact that they don't even, have a way to write her into the story most of the time. She just randomly appears, sometimes cosplaying as an Amazon worker. I did like how this new opening kind of brought back the chaotic nature of the original OP from the first season. And as much as I love Hauka, they were never going to be able to replicate that insanity of an OP. Even though I do think this OP is really good, it's energetic, it's rock heavy, and her collaboration and her chemistry with the main voice actress for Jashin-Chan, who also sings on the opening, is actually really solid. Like, they fit really well together. The animation is also pretty good in this one. I really enjoyed the part where they're all playing instruments, like there's some kind of band, and then you notice in the background that Piccola is playing a woodwind instrument. Like, is there even woodwind in that? Is that a recorder? Is that a recorder? The ending is sung by KAF, or K-A-F, I don't know how they pronounce it, but they're another singer that I really enjoy as well. There's a little bit of build-up in this ending to the chorus, and the chorus is really catchy and powerful, which is nice to see. But it is a pretty energetic song as well as the opening. It's just not nearly as energetic as the OP, and especially compared to the first one. The voice acting is also really well done in this one. It's mostly the same cast. Like I said, the Miku voice actor, or the Miku program, or whatever they did to make her voice the way it is, to make it sound exactly like how Miku talks, is really entertaining and was one of my favorite things in this season. If you do like more out there, parody-filled, reference-filled comedy that's very absurd and wild, this is a show for you. It's one of the best in the genre, in my opinion. It's one of the funniest anime I've ever seen. And I can't wait for Season 4 to get crowdfunded so we can have another season of Demon Snake getting brutally murdered for basically just being a bad person. Sounds great.
Never have enough pussy.